Hello, my name is Elise Van Avery Rickus, and today I'm going to be talking about the artist Thomas Gainsborough. His full name is Thomas Gainsborough. He was born on May 14th, 1727 in Sudbury, United Kingdom, and died on August 2nd, 1788, London, United Kingdom, at the age of 61 years old. Here are some personal and facts that I found interesting about the artist. The first is that he is the youngest child in a family of 9 kids to the parents John and Mary Gainsborough. As a young child, he showed an early interest in the arts. He would spend a large amount of his time sketching in the woods and fields surrounding his hometown of Sudbury, United Kingdom. This was where he first discovered his passion for the arts, specifically landscape work. Interestingly enough, his hard work would be rewarded because his landscape work is one of the main reasons why he has had such a successful career and is still recognized to this very day, many centuries later. Next, besides art, he was also a very passionate draughtsman, or as we say in America, draftsman. A draftsman is someone who makes detailed technical plans or drawings. So, overall, it is safe to say that he was a very talented and hardworking man in multiple areas of his life. Next, we will talk about some career-specific facts of Thomas Gainsborough. When Gainsborough was only 13 years old, he moved to London, United Kingdom, and trained under the French painter and illustrator, Hubert Francis Gravelet. Now, personally, I cannot imagine doing such a scary and daunting task without my parents at such a young age. So this is a great example of Gainsborough's intense passion and work ethic towards his career. After his marriage to Margaret Burr, he moved to Ipswich, England, in 1752. This is where he would continue his practice. Then, in 1759, he moved to Bath, England, where he attracted a large clientele and received high demand for his portrait work. He then eventually returned to and settled to London in 1774. Although a lot of his most famous pieces are portrait work, his private inclination was for landscape and rustic scenes. But the desire was too deep by many for him to push away his talent, and he did a lot of portrait work. In the slides coming up, I will get more into examples of both his landscape and portrait work. Lastly, he was recognized as one of the leading portrait painters in England of the second half of the 18th century. Okay, now we will get into some of Thomas Gainsborough's most famous paintings. The first I will be talking about is The Blue Boy, which was made in 1770. This is recognized as one of Gainsborough's most popular pieces and is a personal favorite of mine. At first glance, your eyes are automatically drawn to the striking blue of the boy's clothing. The color blue was strategically picked out by Gainsborough to represent a few things, such as courage, loyalty, and royalty. It stands out nicely against the neutral colored background, creating a great contrast. It is a full body portrait and is done with oil on canvas. The second painting I will be talking about is called Mr. and Mrs. Andrews. Mr. and Mrs. Andrews hired Thomas Gainsborough to paint this portrait of them following their recent marriage. Gainsborough actually painted this before his career took off, and he was very sought after and famous. And then after he did this piece, he became very famous in the future, which was kind of nice for Mr. and Mrs. Gainsborough that their portrait ended up being so highly renowned. The purpose of this portrait is to depict money and their status together as newlyweds. The third painting I will be talking about is called The Painter's Daughter Chasing a Butterfly. It was done in 1756 and the medium is oil on canvas. The subject of the painting, as mentioned in the title, is Gainsborough's very own daughters named Mary and Margaret. The painting can be described as lyrical in the light of the summer evening as the girls dance across the land. The fourth painting I will be discussing is called The Cottage Girl. It was done in 1785 and staying on brand is oil on canvas for the medium. This is regarded as one of Gainsborough's most fancy pictures. Fancy pictures can be defined as imaginary depictions of rural figures in idealized landscapes. These works are inspired by early romantic poetry, and looking at the deep expression Gainsborough put into this picture, it feels like reading poetry to your eyes. The next painting is called The Artist with His Wife and Daughter. It was done in 1748 and is oil on canvas. Referencing the title, we can come to the conclusion that it depicts Thomas Gainsborough with his wife, Margaret, and daughter. This is the earliest known self-portrait done in oil by Gainsborough and is the only one known where the subject depicted is him with his family. In the picture, we can see he is seated next to his wife and daughter, Mary, who we saw earlier in the butterfly painting. His daughter, Mary's life was unfortunately very short-lived. It is believed that Gainsborough started this painting for Mary's burial, which took place on March 1st, 1748, which, as I stated earlier, is the same year this painting was done. Again, we are seeing this striking and beautiful blue color that is often used in Gainsborough's work. This is because of its symbolism for royalty and courage. The next painting I'll be talking about is called The Honorable Mrs. Grimm. This was done in 1777 and is oil on canvas. This painting is recognized as one of the artist's finest full-length portraits that he has ever done. The subject of the piece is Mary Grimm when she was only 18 years old. It was done only a few months after her marriage to the young Scottish laird, Thomas Grimm, who later would go by Lord Lyndoch. Sadly, Mary's life would shortly end as her health declined due to tuberculosis. The delicate technique of Gainsborough's paintings perfectly helps embody the beauty of Mrs. Grimm. She is leaned up against a column, wearing a magnificent and regal gown and feathered hat that makes her look extremely elegant. The next piece is called Lady in Blue. The portrait is done of an unknown woman, creating a feeling of mystery. It was done in the late 1770s or early 1780s. The exact date is unknown, but is debated and speculated by researchers. It is done with oil on canvas. This piece is very interesting to me personally because there's not a lot known about it, not a lot of facts known about it compared to other works by Gainsborough, facts being the exact date of it and who the subject of the painting was. The facial expression of the woman in blue creates this sort of lure, making you want to know more about her and her story. Another thing that helps create this lure is how she is done up beautifully and looks very royal and important in her dress and her hair. I think this is part of what makes the painting so special and unique, and why it is one of Thomas Gainsborough's most famous paintings. The last painting I'll be discussing is called Mr. and Mrs. William Hallett. Now, this painting was done in 1785 and is oil on canvas. Gainsborough painted this shortly after the couple's marriage. They are shown arm in arm on a morning walk, with a Pomeranian sheepdog to the left of the woman's feet. The style of the portrait takes inspiration from earlier artists' works, Watteau and Van Dyck. Like many of Gainsborough's pieces, it has a lyrical and soft touch to it. The precise use of light and dark makes it look almost poetic. So that will conclude my analysis on some of Thomas Gainsborough's most famous and inspirational paintings. Some prominent themes that I would like to recap on is that he does mainly portrait pieces with beautiful landscapes. A lot of the subjects that he does are newlyweds, and that he uses oil on canvas for all of the pieces that I discussed here today. Lastly, this is my works cited, which I use to learn about the artist and his work. With all that being said, my presentation is concluded. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.